Welcome to Choose Views with Richard Chew.
Get ready to dive into a world of insightful conversations and thought-provoking discussions.
As progressives, our job is to have an all-inclusive, full-on assault with all of our players.
A show that will focus on moving our political, social, economic, gender, and cultural conversation forward.
And all of our players means all of our players.
It's Choose Views. And now, here's your host, Richard Chew.
Good Thursday morning, progressives. The day after Christmas. I'm not going to get in any trouble with Devin today for what I said on Monday, which was Monday was Christmas Eve, and I got the look. No, Mr. Chew, it is Festivus. Don't you remember? But anyhow, guys, welcome to the December 26th edition of, in 2024, of course, Choose Views, 773-763-9278. The phone lines will be open today. The text line will be open as well. Catch us on Facebook Live, TuneIn Radio, YouTube, Twitter stream, iHeartRadio, and of course, email me at richard@WCPT820.com. I will be reading a couple of emails this morning that you wonderful folks sent to me. And by all means, catch all of our shows by subscribing to our WCPT podcast on Apple Podcast or Spotify. There you can get Choose Views, the short version and the long version. Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive. Driving It Home with Patty Vasquez, The Big Picture with Edwin Eisendrath, Out Chicago, and all of our other wonderful programs and interviews. So check out our heartlandsignal.com digital platform and check out the good stuff there that you can share with your cohorts, as the younger folks say. Christmas Day came and went, as it always does, and we all make our effort. To make it as great as possible, thanks to my family for a great Christmas and the initial part of Christmas celebration. I mean, a lot of times Christmas, it goes for the week because you celebrate the day, but then, sometimes not everybody can get there for the day, and you end up doing it on, the next 3 days. So a lot of families that are still out and about and traveling and having a good time. Guys, be safe out there, but enjoy yourselves, and that's what should happen the rest of this week. Enjoy the time if you can take it. If you've taken it off, then take it off and enjoy it, and make sure that you are hanging out with the folks that you care about. As I said, leading up to Christmas Day, but we had a pretty good Christmas, as I was saying to Devin, as did he. Nothing crazy, just nice and easy, laid back. Ate some food, and that is part of the celebration. So I'm hoping that you guys were able to do the same. And wherever you sit in terms of your faith or your spirituality or whatever your connection is, send some love out to the people out there who may not have that same blessing. And that's not a particular of a particular faith or religion that I say that. I just say that as a dude that cares. Send some love out to people who may not have had the same type of experience or care or surroundings on Christmas Day and in general. And, we have, I think one of our biggest responsibilities in life is to care for those who are quote unquote, the least among us, or those who have a lesser state. And that's not just financially, but in terms of their health, in terms of their access to things that make their lives better, to the people that are going to be supportive for them. We have to, as a society, do a better job of that. And I've always said, I've said this in the way that I can say it and be completely transparent and honest with you guys. If I were the guy that were to win, the stupid lottery, where is it now, $1 billion? If I were the guy that wins that, there's not much that I've wanted for in my adult life. So there's not a lot of craziness that I would do, but I would most certainly make a point of reaching out and supporting and trying to find ways to develop tools to care for people who have less than. That's what I would do. I don't need to, go out and buy a fleet of cars and a fleet of this and a fleet of that. But most definitely, I would do probably three things. I would really push our progressive message. One, I would definitely make sure to take care of people who are in need. Start right in, in your immediate community, but certainly in any communities, but build a system to make sure that people are taken care of in terms of our folks who are homeless or are struggling in that space. and scholarships for folks who want to go to college, and particularly those that are older that want to go back to college. You know, a lot of times it's financial reason for folks who are, you know, in their 40s, 50s, or beyond, even in their 60s. They don't want to. They've been in their career. They've been making, you know, earning a good living, and then to take time away to go back to school would maybe interrupt that. So make sure that, you know, those three categories would be definitely well funded. And so that's what Richard would do with winning, you know, $1 billion in the lottery. I'd make sure that those three entities were funded and able to do good stuff and be able to enjoy this life that we're supposed to live in and enjoy. So there you go. A little bit of my thought process about those crazy lottery numbers. But the whole impetus of that was making sure that the people that are around you, whether you win the lottery or not, are they know that they're cared for, and that those who don't have a system or that sort of familial infrastructure in place, if you see somebody out there, you know, check on people. You know where I come from with that. It's just important to me that we, you know, through all this craziness that we're going through and about to go through with this new administration, I can get deep into the conversations around politics, about, you know, our social conversation, our economic conversation. But at the end of the day, it does come back to us connecting with each other and making sure that we're doing well, and that we're reaching out to the people who need the care. Sometimes you don't know, and granted, sometimes you don't know because people are proud and they don't want to let you know. But it doesn't. I believe that if you can pay attention to that, or to those that are out there, you may find that there's someone that's in need that you didn't know about. So just putting that out there, guys, on this December 26, 2024 edition of Choose Views. You get a little bit of everything with me. So appreciate that. And I also, as I said a couple days ago, my Christmas gift that I've received from you guys has been to be able to do this show and to be able to provide you with whatever I'm providing you with. Hopefully it's content that you can use. And I know that there's always going to be a room for improvement and room for growth. So I will continue to do that and have fun with it and keep you guys smiling and making sure that you got a place to land that plane, because that's kind of what liberals do. And where does that come from, that language? Lawrence O'Donnell, I'm going to put my glasses on and read this. Excuse me. This says, Lawrence O'Donnell, what did liberals do? What do liberals do that was so offensive to the Republican Party? I'll tell you what they did. Liberals got women the right to vote. Liberals got African Americans the right to vote. Liberals created Social Security and lifted millions of elderly people out of poverty. Liberals ended segregation. Liberals passed the Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act. Liberals created Medicare. Liberals passed the Clean Air Act and the Clean Water Act. What did conservatives do? They opposed liberals on every one of those things, every one. So when you try to hurl that label at my feet, liberal, quote, as if it were something to be ashamed of, something dirty, something to run away from, it won't work, because I will pick up the label and wear it as a badge of honor. That comes from Lawrence O'Donnell from MSNBC. And I saw that and I thought, you know what? Yeah, you know, I can roll with those words. I think by and large that liberals have, you know, progressive liberal Democrats have leaned into what Lawrence talks about, and kind of the foundation in my notes about, you know, the Christmas spirit. And that should be how we live 365 days a year. We shouldn't just have it be, you know, the celebration on one day. And I know a lot of you guys live that way right now, so I'm not beating anybody up. But that's how I see it. We've done things to help folks. That's always been my position, is our party and our ideas are about helping everyone that we can help, not about taking away from or standing in the way of things progressing and getting better and stronger for the entire community. That's the badge, like Lawrence said, I'll pick that up every day and wear it, because I know that my goal in life has been to help as many folks as I possibly can. And when my older sister says this often, and I'm just kind of taking her words and putting them into my spin, But those of us who are blessed with certain things should be able to use those blessings and pass on to others. And it isn't always financial. Oftentimes it's just your time. It's just your energy. It's your patience. It's your willingness to listen to someone that needs to be listened to. So that's oftentimes what we as progressive liberal Democrats, I won't say we forget, but we have to be reminded that that's what I believe, try to be all about. I had a few calls earlier in the week on Monday and Tuesday where folks that called in said, that's how they see the holiday season, is at that time. And I want us to expand that. As part of our superpower, I want us to expand it to make it an everyday thing. If I ruled the world, if I ran everything, it would be every day we should be doing good things for other people, not trying to find ways to hurt people and tear folks down. That it would make for such it's almost like if we could just flip that switch, Devin, and say, you know what, let's just not be, and that's not all, pie in the sky kind of thinking. It's just, let's just do good stuff for each other. Let's find out what's going on with everybody. Let's make sure that as progressive liberal Democrats, we are doing things to make things better for everyone else. How cool would that be? In so many areas. And it's just, it would just be one of those things where, you get up in the morning and you go, okay, who am I going to serve today? Who am I going to help? So we'll talk about that a little bit more through the course of this day after Christmas show. But right now, we're going to take a little break. We'll come back. We'll grab a couple of calls. The number, of course, is 773-763-9278. Choose Views. We'll be right back.
Good morning. You're waking up with Richard Chu.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning.
We're live and ready to hear from you. Text or call us now at 773-763-9278. Same number. Simple as that. Let's get the conversation going on WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk.
Hey, guys, welcome back to Choose Views, 773-763-9278. So last week and the week before, I asked a question, kind of a standing question over the 2 weeks, how you were going to navigate. And, of course, New Year's is next Wednesday. Yes, thank you, brain. New Year's is next Wednesday. But still in the holiday season, still working through and enjoying and doing all the things that we want to be able to do. But I asked the question, what will you do? How will you react and respond if and when someone in your family, your cadre of friends and other folks says to you that thing, which is, yeah, I voted for Trump, or I didn't vote at all, or I voted third party. So my question this morning is, and I'm really curious, if anybody, and I'm not going to say if anybody, because I know that there are folks that had that happen in the last couple of days. Folks arrived on Monday or Sunday, Tuesday, even Christmas morning. I know some of you had that happen. So what I want to know is how you dealt with it, how you reacted to it, what you said to those persons. So when you call in, when you call in, or if you text, let me know what your experience was, and how you navigated through that. Because one of my goals was to keep you guys, stouted up in those conversations that you would inevitably be having. So let us know with your calls and with your texts today, kind of how you, if it happened, and then if it did, how did you navigate through it? And with that, I will pivot subtly over to our Choose Views news for this Thursday, December 26, 2024. And American Airlines, the world's largest airline, has lifted a ground stop that had a lot of people stalled, literally. And of all of its flights that were stalled in the U.S. flights, one of the busiest travel days of the year, of course, being yesterday, said a technical vendor glitch, of course, wreaked havoc on many of its operations throughout the day on Tuesday, as thousands of passengers prepared to board planes the day before Christmas. So it didn't say whether it expected any residual delays. The airline expected to fly nearly 12.7 million passengers during this holiday period, while the FAA anticipates 30,000 U.S. flights across all carriers that took place on Christmas Eve and Christmas Day alone. So hopefully that's gonna stick and they can go forward because people have got to get back home. Starbucks strike, as we talked about this on Monday and Tuesday, closed around 170 cafes nationwide on Christmas Eve, and the union, the workers' union, Starbucks Workers United, aimed at disrupting operations at nearly 300 locations. The 5-day work stoppage affected Starbucks locations in major cities including Boston, New York, and Philadelphia, with more than 5,000 workers participating, according to the union. It's the largest strike to date. It's largest strike to this date. The strike started Friday last week after pay negotiations hit an impasse. A Starbucks spokesperson said the chain offers average pay of more than $18 per hour, the best in its class benefits. So let's see where that ends up. Middle class slashes holiday spending. Americans are cutting back and have cut back on holiday gifts this year as inflation continues to take a toll. Now, those making $40,000 to $100,000 a year say they expect to spend this holiday season, 20% less than they did last year. Some of those numbers are still not totally in, even as wealthier families spend about 6% more for an all-time high of $1,578 in terms of their holiday season spending. At the same time, holiday spending overall is expected to break records, rising as much as $989 billion, according to one survey. So certain parts of our income stratas are spending less, while certain parts of the income strata are spending more, but collectively there's more being spent across the board. Netflix goes all in on Squid Game. I didn't even know about this until I read the article. The fictional life or death competition of Squid Game is continuing through the end of the day today when its second season launches on Netflix. And no matter who lives or dies, the streaming giant is positioning itself to be the ultimate winner through splashy global promotional campaigns and brand collaborations. But Netflix is also hoping to extend the Squid Game phenomena in order to turbocharge its gaming business, which is small compared with its streaming reach, according to the Hollywood Reporter. Squid Game Unleashed is a collaboration of Netflix Entertainment and Gaming Wings, and it includes in-game rewards for fans who binge watch new episodes. Devin, did you know anything about that? You did? Okay. All right, a little bit. All right, cool. I don't want to feel completely out in the desert on that, so Devin just threw me a lifeline. U.S. Steel deal referred for review. In other words, a high-level government review board was deadlocked on the national security risk of a nearly $15 billion planned deal for Japan's Nippon Steel to purchase U.S. Steel, handing the decision to President Joe Biden. Biden, who came out against the deal in March, has just over 2 weeks to reach a final decision, per the White House. The White House has previously said the once iconic U.S. Steel company should be domestically owned and run. Companies have suggested they would seek legal challenge to any refusal. That's going to be a big deal, to use Joe's words. Banks are suing the Fed over the stress test they are requiring now. Major banks, including J.P. Morgan Chase, Citigroup, and Goldman Sachs, along with business groups, are suing the Fed over its annual stress test, according to CNBC. Led by the Bank Policy Institute, they support the test, but argue the process lacks clarity and leads to, quote, restrictions on bank capital. The Fed's annual stress test requires banks to maintain sufficient capital reserves for potential loan losses and determines the limits on the share repurchases and dividends. Complicated, but not. Very simple. Have enough money in reserves. It's that simple. That's one of the reasons that we had the problems in 2007, 8, and 9. While the Fed plans to review and improve the process, including seeking public feedback in 2025, the banks remain concerned the changes may not address their issues. Well, their issues are really simple. Make sure you have enough reserves and that you're monitoring your loans. It's not complicated. So the banks have got to they don't have to figure that out. They have to acknowledge the fact that without these stress tests, that they can put, bank customers in jeopardy. because they don't have the reserves there. And we could have a 7, 8, and 9 all over again. In any event, I'll stay on point. Lego defies the toy industry slowdown. Check this one out. It's been a tough year unless you're the toy maker Lego. The Danish purveyor of colorful plastic bricks posted a 13% increase in revenue for the first 6 months of the year, while industry-wide sales are on pace to decline for the second year in a row. Lego has leaned into licensing of popular franchises like Star Wars and Harry Potter, expanded into the film and video game business, and broadened its audience, which includes adults. Lego has been driving for nothing but growth, according to one analyst. I kind of like Lego, or at least I did back in the day. It was always fun, and then certainly when you have nieces and nephews and grandnieces and nephews, it gives them something to do. So there you go, guys. A few Views news this morning to kind of let you know what's happening in and around the world that we live in and some of the things that we all have to deal with. And we'll be making some additional, some changes a little bit to Views news in 2025, but we're not there yet. So, but we'll see. You guys will see when we get there. Let's go to our good friend, Devin, our good friend Kurt in Akron, Ohio. Good morning and Merry post-Christmas to you, Kurt.
Merry post-Christmas to you, Richard, and Merry post-Christmas to Karen and Kurt as well.
There you go.
My co-workers in the dedicated caller realm.
That's right. Hey, Kurt, I got to ask you a question. So on Monday, how hard did you laugh when I said that today, Monday, December 23rd, is Christmas Eve? And then I told you guys about how Devin looked at me when he was like, "No, Richard, it's Festivus."
Well, my dad used to use Christmas Eve as an excuse when we were kids for all my mom and dad and the 3 kids to actually open presents from all 5 of us. So I knew exactly what you were talking about with Christmas Eve.
There you go. How you doing, my man?
We're holding up. My dad got a gut punch on Monday when he found out that his best friend since he was a kid unexpectedly died of a massive stroke 2 days before Christmas. And it was 2 days before this guy's 72nd birthday.
Wow.
And, my dad's really taking it hard because, it was his best friend. And this is a guy who actually went above and beyond in their friendship.
Yeah.
The best example I can give, folks, is 9/11. If you remember, George W. had grounded all the commercial flights after the attack.
Yep.
And my sister, Tracy, was expected to get married on September 15th, 2001. So that night, my dad had spoken to my grandmother, and it was decided that my dad did not have time to go from Northeast Ohio to Southwest Iowa to pick her up and get back in time for the rehearsal dinner on Friday the 14th. So she was going to call my sister and say that she wasn't going to be coming to the wedding. So about an hour later, my dad's friend Jim, who just passed away on Monday, called, who happened to live in the same town as my grandmother in Iowa, called my father and said, "So, how is Nora getting to Tracy's wedding on Saturday?" And my dad explained it, and he said, "No." He said she should not be missing her only granddaughter's wedding. He said, "You call your mom back, and you tell her that if she wants to, we're leaving at 6:30 in the morning. If she wants to join us, we'll drive her to the wedding." Uh-huh. So she did end up making it to my sister's wedding.
How about that?
But
Good friend.
Kind of a friend that actually volunteer to drive your friend's 87-year-old half senile mother halfway across the country.
Yeah, I know what you mean, man. That's why I say so many times, Kurt, that local starts local, even in our relationships with our friends and those around us, is making sure that the people close to us are taken care of and that we look in on people. And so, sorry for the loss of your dad's good friend. And just send some love to your pops from me, because I know he's been really maintaining he's been maintaining a sense of decorum that Marines do. I think I've shared with you, my brother-in-law is a retired Marine, and like your dad is, they're pretty much in the same age. They served during pretty much the same time. So kudos to your pops.
You also asked about the $1 billion.
Oh yeah, yes.
Okay. Oh, and then I have a couple things real quick. The $1 billion thing, I would buy my local Kent Akron radio, live and local talk radio station, WNIR, and make it all liberal and syndicate Richard Chew in the morning.
Okay.
And then as far as the Trumpy garbage that was going on Christmas,
Yeah.
my mother-in-law got Melania's book and she got J.D. Vance's book from my brother-in-law and his son for Christmas. And my mother-in-law didn't vote because she says, I'm not going to be around in 4 years. Well, whatever. But anyway, all I did is I just shook my head because I thought I'm outnumbered at least 2 to 8 here in this situation because my wife and I both voted against Trump. But I thought I'm just going to shake my head and make it look like I'm not even paying attention. So I kind of quietly texted my sister-in-law from Maine, who's over in California with her in-laws, and said, oh my gosh, your mom just got Melania's book and J.D. Vance's book, and I think she's turning Trumpy. And she goes, oh my gosh, how disgusting. Is she getting dementia?
Oh, gosh. Well, that's why I've said sometimes you have to, not sometimes, we always have to measure what our responses are going to be to things. And sometimes they're going to be loud and boisterous and all that. And sometimes they're going to be less than that. And, we got to read the room to some extent.
When you're outnumbered, you don't want to really get too boisterous unless you can really hold your own.
And you also have to plot. You have to plot your, for lack of better words, and your father would know this as a Marine. You have to plot your exit strategy when you're outnumbered. You have to be willing to say, okay, I'm still going to win, because the win, it literally is getting to the next destination, whatever that might be, safely. So if it may mean slowing down and letting it be what it's going to be, and then finding your moments where you're going to dive in and make your point. So I get it.
Hence when he had trouble with a neighbor kid stealing his mailbox 30 years ago. He got on his camis in the middle of the yard, in the middle of the front yard, laying there spread eagle. And the kid stopped trying to steal the mailbox for a third time. And as he was doing it, my dad was creepy crawling up down the driveway. And as this kid's shaking the mailbox trying to get it off, my dad taps him on the shoulder, and the kid used a little swear word and ran off. My dad got him. But the funny thing was, he stole the door off the mailbox the first time, and he went to a neighbor kid and said, I got the door off their mailbox. And the other neighbor kid says, you don't want to mess with him. He's a Marine. He served in Vietnam. He's crazy. He's got an M16 and he'll kill you.
Oh, that is too funny, my man. Too funny.
Funny thing is my dad never served in Vietnam and he wasn't crazy, but still.
But he was still a Marine. So
yeah, and he had an M16.
So 2 out of 2 ain't bad. So
yeah, that's just what a Marine does. And the funny thing was my dad says, you're too stupid to even know that I was standing there or sitting there the whole time while you were doing that. And you didn't even see me. And then he goes, where were you hiding? He goes, you're never going to know. And then the dad asked. So then the dad asked my dad, where were you hiding? And my dad explained it to him and everything. But he says, yeah, you're just too stupid to even see that I was actually there.
Oh, Kurt. Well, I'm glad you guys are. I'm glad you guys are well. Go ahead.
Yeah, but as my dad would say, the sins of his past were catching up with him.
Well, I think that he's earned a little bit of favor. So having been a good dad, having been good uncle and a grandpa and all the things that he's been able to do. So are you and a good husband? Yeah, I can't leave that out as well. So thanks for the share, my man.
You can't really slouch on that.
No, we don't want to get in trouble with mom. We can't let that happen. So I got to take a quick break, good fellow. But I'm glad you're well.
Very well.
And
Merry Christmas, and I'll talk to you next week or sometime.
All right, Kurt. Thanks for everything, man. Be well. Talk to you soon.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye now. All right, let's take a quick one, Devin. 773, guys, 763-9278. Choose Views. We'll be right back.
It's Choose Views with Richard Chew on WCPT 820, where facts matter.
Hey, guys, welcome back to Choose Views. Thanks for being with us, 773-763-9278. Many of you guys are probably just rolling over from all the food you ate yesterday, and your bellies are full, and that's a good thing. And to that end, I did ask a question this morning. I asked a question about did you have any occurrences, and if you did, how did you navigate them? And I'm just curious how you guys may have, dealt with that around the table, and then conversation pops up about Trump, the 34-time convicted felon and twice adjudicated rapist, that guy. And then also when I threw out what I would do with a stupid lottery win of the big number, but Kurt was right on point. He would buy up a radio station and make it totally progressive and put a great message out, and I'm kind of there with him. So then when talking about food and having your bellies full, I wanted to read a couple of emails. I asked you guys, and some of you replied with an email about what you would do, or not what would you do, but what your meal would look like and what you were doing. And I got a couple of fun responses from folks. First of all, shout out to Diane, who sent a nice email to me about some things that she would like to see us doing in 2025 with WCPT, and certainly we've actually. So first of all, shout out Diane for your email, and we're actually working on some of these things. So I got to kind of keep it under wraps, but we are working on some things to get more involvement with you guys here locally, as well as folks throughout the country, and as it relates to organizing and promoting. We've got some things happening, so got to keep it a little bit under wraps, but appreciate your email, Diane. And then got a fun email from Michelle and Bob up in Marquette, Michigan. And I'll just read this to you because the question was, so talk to us about your Christmas dinner. And what they had to say is, we like to fix Paul Prudhomme's recipe for duck or goose, usually duck lately, as goose is harder to find. Sometimes we have fixed Cajun prime rib. Sides include roasted Brussels sprouts, roasted parsnips, carrots, and beets. Also, either duck, rice, or mashed potatoes mixed with butternut squash. Pear gravy for the duck or goose. Dessert is sweet potato and pecan pie. And eggnog pie, one of her mother's favorite recipes. Yeah, it does sound pretty yummy. So I wanted to read that to you guys because I saw this and I was like, yeah, that the Cajun prime rib sounds pretty yummy as well. So shout outs to you guys who sent me an email about what you that would be like if we had a contest of the favorite, or had a contest for the best Christmas meal. That certainly from Michelle and Bob would be high on the list. But thanks guys for that email, and appreciate you participating in my little questions. So let me know what happened, if anything, and how you dealt with it. If you got any commentary that you want to share with us about the folks that you engaged with during Christmas dinner in the past couple of days and past couple of nights. A little bit of a not so much of a pivot, but to go back to something that we were talking about earlier. Excuse me. In terms of how you're reaching out to people and who you're connecting with. One of the great things about what we are able to do here at WCPT, as I've said this so many times, is that it gives, hopefully, you guys a reminder that you've got power too. And it's not just those of us who have the shows or that are doing podcasts or doing any form of communication to the masses. You've got power too, and it's a day-to-day thing. Sometimes, as Kurt said, you got to look at the numbers and you got to read the room. But that doesn't mean that your voice isn't to be heard. And so that's what I want to continue to encourage all of you guys anywhere in the country to do, is to make sure that you know your voice is strong. And it's going to be even more important that you do this as we go forward. We've got a clip that Devin and I put together that I want you guys to hear that speaks to that very thing about, we can't give up. We're not going to give up. We may get, we're going to have some hurdles, but and more importantly than just having hurdles, we're going to have some obstacles. So I don't want to downplay it. I don't want anybody to yell at me and say, "Hey, Richard, you're sugarcoating this." I'm not sugarcoating it. It's going to be some difficult, what. But we can't give up. We're not allowed to check out. And that's why I want you guys to hear this clip that Devin and I put together.
Millions of people voted for authoritarianism, corruption, grift, oppression, division, hatred. I'm going to try to remember them, but I'm also going to remember the tens of millions that resisted. And I refuse to do what MAGA culture wants me to do, give up and let them operate unchecked and uncriticized. They want us to check out, right? Because if we check out, then Nation A becomes Nation A and B. Standing against the threat is the only hope we've got of somehow salvaging what the United States was supposed to be. The agents of harm must be confronted by the advocates for humanity. And even if this country self-destructs all around us, we can hold our heads up and say that we never gave up, we never stopped fighting, we never surrendered our values, our humanity. We can say proudly that our conscience is clean. Let's work together to make sure historians also remember that.
Yeah, so the reason that this clip really touched me and is a certain level of import is this is coming from, regular folks. And oftentimes the power, we forget that the power isn't just with the folks that are elected officials, whether it's Mayor Johnson, whether it's any of our county officials or our city older women and men here in Chicago, or if it's any of our state officials in terms of House and Senate state legislatures or governors and all the rest. It's individuals that are recognizing that they're not going to lay down. They're not going to cede. They're not going to check out. That doesn't mean, that does not mean that you cannot heal and you cannot get recharged. And you should. And once you recharge, the recharging should allow you to be able to do, as the gentleman said, and that's reconnect and not be checked out. And I think that as I continue to go forward with this show, I'm going to continue to remind you guys with my own words, but also with the words of others who have realized the power that they have and that they're not going to be the ones to check out. I played this clip for you guys a week or so after the election, and we call it Highly Vibey. And it's a woman it's about an 8-9 minute conversation. Don't worry, Devin, I'm not going to put you on the spot like that. Yeah, no, we're not gonna do that today. We're gonna save it for the New Year, save it for New Year's Eve show. But it's a clip that I want to play for you guys next week as my little end of year send off as to how we want to come back ready to fight and come out fighting and not checking out, recharging most definitely, but definitely not checking out. And so we'll get that to you guys in its entirety, because I think it's highly motivational and highly informative in terms of what she's taking from this election and how she's going to make sure she goes forward. I've had a number of people that have asked me I had probably over 50 people that asked me for the clip. So clearly that clip has meaning, and it's clearly it's one that people want to have in their repertoire of things to share with folks, if nothing other than to share it with themselves or to replay it for themselves. The craziness of the 34-time convicted felon and twice adjudicated rapist goes back a ways. And I want to share something with you that I came across over the weekend. This is a quote from that dude from a People magazine interview going back to 1998. The quote says, "If I were to run, I'd run as a Republican. They're the dumbest group of voters in the country. They believe anything on Fox News. I could lie and they'd still eat it up. I bet my numbers would be terrific." That's a quote from the 34-time convicted felon, twice adjudicated rapist.
That's been proven false several times, Richard.
That's been proven false?
Yeah, the video clip is clearly AI, but that was they've been running that since 2016. It's been proven false by Time Magazine.
But that was in People Magazine.
It's been proven false, so that quote never happened.
Really?
Yes, I've had to correct Joan Esposito multiple times. That's been proven false.
And
we're facts matter here, guys. That's the only reason why.
Oh, then
I'm defending that imbecile at all.
No. I'm glad that we caught that then. I wasn't aware of that. Okay, well, thank you.
Really quick.
What's that?
Google it real quick.
Okay, got it. That's amazing because it was. So has it been something that the people at People Magazine have chimed in on as well?
Yeah. Here we go. Snopes. Trump didn't once say Republicans are the dumbest group of voters. Of course, they don't need to pay. The claim in 1998, Donald Trump said he'd run as a Republican because they're the dumbest group of voters. Claims that. Blah, 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 blah.
Got it. Okay.
We found no evidence Trump ever said that. That claim comes back to several platforms like X, Twitter, Facebook, and TikTok, where it was shared. However, the quote was never found on any sources. We've continued to cover the former president. This is how old this article is. But no real video evidence is around. Found.
Wow. Well, I'm glad we got that cleared up.
Sorry, just
No, I'm glad we got that cleared up because it's clearly something that they put together and it was wrong. So thanks for the cleanup on aisle 7 there. Wow. Well, that's why, and I'm glad that Devin helped us clean that up real quickly. Parts of the concern around AI are troubling for so many people because you can assemble something like that and not have the actual data that was used. So I'm glad we cleaned that up, Devin. Thank you. With that being said, let's go to a quick break. 773-763-9278. Choose Views. We'll be right back.
Good morning. You're waking up with Richard Chew.
It's what I want to hear.
All the time.
We're live and ready to hear from you. Text or call us now at 773-763-9278. Same number. Simple as that. Let's get the conversation going on WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk.
Hey guys, welcome back to Choose Views, 773-763-9278. So as we're talking about the media and how they get certain things wrong, and we every now and again can get some information that we've got to clean up on aisle 7. Here's a clip from a young man walking down the streets of New York, and we refer to it as the Fourth Estate.
We are watching in real time the Fourth Estate, meaning legacy media, right-wing media, closing rank around the billionaire class to defend their interests. You see it across the ideological spectrum that's allowed to be shown to Americans. The New York Times, the Daily episode, did reporting on the healthcare CEO assassin. That episode was brought to you by ExxonMobil, right? They are completely compromised and owned by the billionaire interests, so they cannot criticize them. This is the great unspooling. Class warfare is upon us. And then, God forbid you watch Fox News, you'll see Laura Ingraham simultaneously condemn this guy as a lunatic and then say that the man who killed that Subway performer was a hero. So you see, it's never been more apparent who the media is there to protect. And because of that, credulity is strained and people are going to go to different sources like Taylor Lorenz or somebody like that for their coverage, right? Because the hypocrisy is just too great at this point. We see through this, and there is no culture issue that's going to rise up to combat it. No trans, no immigrants. It is poor versus rich in this country, and the press have chosen which side they're on.
Yeah, and so to that end, one of the things that we always try to do is point out when there is information that's not as accurate as we think it is or should be. So good on Devin for helping us clean up on aisle 7. But the Fourth Estate, the media, and the reason that this is important, I believe, is that we can go back and talk about Joe and Mika. We can talk about others in terms of the ABC suit that had George Stephanopoulos involved. And even now, because this is really a form of media, and that being Meta, and they're all bending and kissing the ring in advance. And so the concern that I think many people are having and will have is how that's going to impact the clarity and the accuracy of the media. And I think that, at least one of the things that I want to try to do, not try to do, or will continue to do, is if something's not completely accurate or clear on any level, that we clean up on aisle 7 very quickly. However, the mainstream media has already shown, to this gentleman's point, where they're going to stand. And I think some people might say it's out of fear. Others might say it's out of just being complicit and protecting their business model. But they've already damaged their business model in many ways because their viewership is so way down since. And again, the toppling of this, if you will, came from the fact that Joe and Nika went down to Mar-a-Lago. I keep coming back to the phrase, you can't go to Mar-a-Lago. Thank you, David Jolly, because you can't. And that's why not checking out is so critically important. That's why recharging is so critically important. It's because if you check out, you're susceptible to kissing the ring. You're susceptible to, quote, going to Mar-a-Lago. And that can't happen. So I'm glad we had that clip to share with you guys. There is another interesting point that was made by a gentleman who was talking about how, what's missing, what's happening, how did we lose our way, if you will, and how did people vote in this election the way that they did? And I think that this is one of those times where, again, like I said earlier, individuals and their voices mean so much. And this goes back to people who said that they were believing in certain things and they were going to support certain things, that ultimately the votes did not show up to represent that. And we have this clip that I'm calling Silver Fox asking the question, what am I missing?
I got to be missing something. Like, I often wonder, like, am I on the wrong side? Am I missing something? There's a lot of people that I respect and admire and love that are on the opposite side, are believing things that I'm not believing. And I've done the research. Like, I want to make sure that I'm right. I've done the research. I've looked at the data. I've looked at all the information. I firmly believe I'm on the right side of all this. Seriously. Like, the guy did nothing for 4 years. Did nothing he said he was going to do. Yet people believe that this time he's different. He has no plan at all. He has nothing. Like, what am I missing? I just don't understand it. I want to. But just the numbers aren't there. The math ain't mathing. You know what I mean? I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't think so. It doesn't feel that way in here. You know what I mean? I don't know. Y'all take care of yourself. Love you.
The math ain't mathing. So, yeah, what am I missing? What is it that people missed? And I had this conversation with a friend about a week and a half ago about the conversation that we hear oftentimes. People are not voting. People voted against their interest. And we were talking about this on the family meeting about how maybe people's interests are exactly what they voted for. And I talked about this a little bit last week. People voted for what they, in many cases, they were afraid of, or they say that they're afraid of. But in actuality, it comes back to maybe their interests are, in fact, to create further disparity, further harm, further conversations around the others, and not about actually moving forward. So sometimes I don't think that we necessarily, those of us that are progressive liberal Democrats, necessarily are missing anything. It's just what we probably have to recognize is that those who are voting and that did vote for this craziness, that's what they actually wanted. And the willful ignorance that I've talked about and the stubborn arrogance that I've talked about reigns true. It's not necessarily that people voted against their interest. They voted for making sure that others don't have the opportunity to move forward. And that, to me, is a different vote than voting against your interest. That's a vote that says I'm voting to protect my little, fiefdom, my little mental fiefdom, if nothing else, so that I don't have to worry about the others being competitive with me or the others having what I have. And that may be depending on which, economic, group we're talking about, that could be folks that are very wealthy. That could be folks that are, wealthy. That could be folks that are middle income, middle class, if you will, and all the other groups. That mindset, I think, is as much of a driving force as any conversation around inflation or the price of eggs or the price of gas and all the rest. The southern border, the conversation around inflation, it was purely because people who are in any of those economic classes or levels want to hold on to that which they perceive as theirs. And by doing that, because here's the thing, because the groups of people who are not your white American voters, so any group that's not that, so to save a little bit of time, in some cases voted that way because they themselves don't want to see other members of their own community aspire to what they have, as I call it, pulling up the ladder. But the largest voting bloc in America, and that voted for Trump in this election and voted for Republicans in this election, I believe voted for keeping their status in place so that they don't have to deal with those that are not like them. We're going to talk about this a little bit more in the second hour, but we're going to take a quick break. Of course, the number is 773-763-9278. Choose Views. We'll be right back.
Welcome to Choose Views with Richard Chew.
Get ready to dive into a world of insightful conversations and thought-provoking discussions.
As progressives, our job is to have an all-inclusive, full-on assault with all of our players.
A show that will focus on moving our political, social, economic, gender, and cultural conversation forward.
And all of our players means all of our players.
It's Choose Views. And now, here's your host, Richard Chew.
Hey, guys. Welcome back to Choose Views, 773-763-9278. If you make your way over to our Heartland Signal digital platform at heartlandsignal.com, you'll be able to find some of the quotes that are there and some of the items that we have on Heartland Signal on X. And they range from farewell speeches from Representative Jerry Carl in California, in Alabama, I should say, and some of the nasty nicknames that they had for some of his former staff. Also, Wisconsin Senate President Mary Felskowski says we don't have a gap in Wisconsin in terms of their covering of Medicaid in the state of Wisconsin. And let's see what else. Ron Johnson says that hundreds of thousands of people probably lost their lives because why? They didn't have access to hydroxychloroquine, ivermectin, saying that that would have having access to that would have slowed down the impacts of COVID, which is scientifically and medically inaccurate, and a few other really good Heartland Signal on X items that you guys can grab and share. And I got an interesting text. Thank you, Nancy, that says, let's see, thank you, Richard and WCPT, for fact-checking, even if it appears to benefit progressive. If Fox News fact-checked the misinformation, alternate facts, and bold-faced lies, Kamala Harris would be president. It's so important that Democrats and progressives be the party of truth, and that is true. So thank you, Nancy, for that that text this morning. And keeping it real is what we do. Cleaning up on aisle 7. Got a mop bucket and a mop to make sure that we keep it right for you guys and keep it moving forward. See, I've always made at least I believe I've always tried to say, you make a mistake, you acknowledge it, and then you move forward from it as best you can. And when we have information that isn't accurate, then we got to deal with that real time as best. And that's what I talk about. And that's why I try to stand in that void. If it's not accurate, then if someone's out there telling you that or spewing something that's willfully, there's things that happen that are accidents or not quite the full information that we need on something. We want to clean those up quickly because that way we keep our message strong and moving forward. And as Nancy says, of the party of truth. That's a little different from people who are willfully spewing garbage and that knowingly are saying things that are not correct or not accurate or even in the ballpark. There's miles between one and the other. And so, whenever there's something happens that's not accurate, that we don't have all the information on, the cleanest and the easiest thing to do is to say, hey, we got to get that one right. So appreciate your text, Nancy. How many people do you guys know in your world right now are, I guess you could say, working hard in an environment that is, from an economic standpoint, hard to live in? In other words, they work in a community that's doesn't represent the income of the people that are the folks that work there. They represent the income of people who may visit there, that are vacationing there. And the reason I wanted to introduce this and talk about this is that I was watching a report. There's a long version and there's one that we can briefly play this morning. And after this clip, I want to come back and talk about something that is it's highly in the conversation of how people end up voting and where the gap is when it comes to this conversation about Republicans versus Democrats, and the everyday working man and woman. We have this brief clip about income disparity in of all places, Jackson Hole, Wyoming. So Devin and I put this together, and we're going to let you guys kind of get a quick hear of this one.
In Jackson Hole, Wyoming's Shangri-La in the Tetons, you need silly money to be taken seriously. John Smaley's a construction supervisor in Jackson. Like so many workers here, he can only afford to live on the other side of these mountains, priced out of Jackson Hole's new Gilded Age. Vacationing one-percenters competing for a second home or a fourth.
The billionaires are buying out the millionaires.
For most people here, real estate prices are wildly unaffordable. This county's median income is $108,000 a year, but the average listing price of a single-family home is more than $7 million.
A lot of these stores, your average working person, this is not for us. This is beyond gentrification. This is super gentrification.
Driving home the inequality, John Smaley's hour-long commute over this mountain pass to his house in Driggs, Idaho. Last month, that pass collapsed, 80 feet of it gone. A landslide impassable for 3 weeks, further separating the two worlds.
If you're looking at the American dream or whatever, like if you work hard enough, you can have what you want, but you can't.
It's not just gone for now, it's gone forever.
It's gone forever.
It hurts our community when we don't have the people that are working here, living here.
So that's the question that I asked at the beginning of that, or prior to playing that clip, is people working in an environment where they can't live because of the cost of living in that area. Okay. Wyoming resoundingly voted for who? They didn't vote for the person that is and said that they recognize the problem and that they want to legitimately fix it. They voted for the person who has in his first 4 years in office, or his prior 4 years in office, didn't do anything to fix the problem in Wyoming. Okay? But yet they voted again for him to do what? Not fix it even more? And so when I hear this conversation around the Republicans are going to do better for the economy than the Democrats have, I would have to ask this question from a purely objective standpoint as best I can, in all honesty. The people who were running the state of Wyoming, so, and just put it this way. Oftentimes, Republicans, MAGA, the mainstream media, or certain parts of the mainstream media will try to focus on how awful it is in Chicago. Crime is awful and all those things. You know what I'm talking about. I'm not going to laundry list it in this moment. And how bad it is. Okay? But hear a story or stories or even better, not even stories, but ongoing peppering of a place like the state of Wyoming. or trash talking. You don't see the government officials on the Republican side going off to Wyoming and saying, "Wow, it's very difficult for everyday folks to live here." But that state's run by Republicans. So by comparison, think about this. You hear this garbage talk from Republicans and MAGA and the mainstream media in many cases about how awful it is in the state of Illinois and in Chicago and the greater Chicagoland area. But what you don't hear is that same ire directed toward a state like Wyoming, where there are people who can't afford to live. The gentleman that was talked about in this piece has to drive over an hour into the state of Idaho to actually live because he can't afford to live in this area of Wyoming because of the uber amount of wealth and overinflated cost of living and further real estate prices. But that state's not run by Democrats. It's run by Republicans. So I wonder where the question is, or where the conversation is around why a state like Wyoming, a red state that's voted red for as far back as I can recall, on a national level and on a state level, in terms of their vote for president, national in terms of their senators, and the majority of their representatives for the House of Representatives and their state legislatures. Where is the ire? And this is why some people have said to me, Richard, you don't talk enough about the problems with the Electoral College. And I've had a number of emails from people and some texts that have said, Richard, you're dropping the ball there. You need to talk more about the problems and that you're missing the elephant in the room when it comes to the Electoral College. And I get where people come from with that. And I appreciate when you guys send me, hey, Richard, talk about this, or let's get into that, or maybe you should spend a little bit more time over here. I get it. And I try to chart like the things that I receive from you and then say, how am I going to deal with that going forward? And that's part of my responsibility to you. But's not the right word. And in talking about one of those systemic functional problems we have, the state of Wyoming gets 2 senators, and their electoral votes in a national election do have impact. So I asked the question, why is it that a state keeps wash, rinsing, and repeating to get this same outcome that ultimately is causing people in that state to have that disparity? And on a national level, why is it that the state that's the least populated state in the country, based on what I've read, and I've done that, I've vetted that, but it's the 10th largest in terms of land mass. So there's a disconnection as it relates to our systemic voting and how votes are allotted, if you will. Not votes are allotted, but how our electoral numbers are allotted that then translate into votes. And then the outcome that they get in terms of the state's actual taking care of its own citizens. And Wyoming, and certain areas of Wyoming are an example of that. And I think that the more we have the conversation, or the more that the mainstream media will direct its ire towards states like that, if they're really going to try to, for lack of better words, out what politicians in states are doing, Wyoming should catch some of that conversation as well. Not just states like Illinois and cities like Chicago, but states like Wyoming and cities and communities like Jackson Hole. Because there's clearly an issue there where the folks who work there can't live there. They've got to live someplace else. All right, guys, we'll take a quick break. The number, of course, is 773-763-9278. Choose Views. Will be right back.
It's Choose Views with Richard Chew on WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk.
All right, guys, welcome back to Choose Views, 773-763-9278. So I'm not going to pick on Wyoming too much more. I just want to point out the disparity oftentimes in the conversation and the coverage of parts of the country that, in my mind, get a pass. And they get a pass from the mainstream media, and they get a pass from politicians because it's easy to go after certain areas rather than others. So that being said, I'll take my foot off the gas a little bit on Wyoming. I just want to highlight to you guys that in many cases, there are places that our mainstream media just completely doesn't talk about, doesn't cover, doesn't even, put any attention toward. And this is one of those cases. So income disparity in Jackson Hole, Wyoming is a real thing. All right, guys, I will pivot a little bit, and in the sense that we're going to pick up another topic, and or at least not a topic, but some shout outs to folks that have reached out to me the last day or so on socials. Angela, Richard, Franziska, Chuck, Jen, Jessica, let's see, David O, Nebitz, Petty Rubble. That's probably a play on Betty Rubble. And so thanks to you guys and Jenny, thanks to you guys for sending me various bits of information and hellos on social media. Always nice to know that folks are out there saying hi. I haven't heard from you guys yet. Did anything happen? Did anybody, completely vomit up their I voted for Trump, or I voted third party, or I didn't vote at all during Christmas, or your Christmas dinner, or Christmas Eve, or Christmas Eve? Did you guys have any of those incidents come your way? I'm curious. So, give us a holler here so we can talk about that and how you dealt with it, if you had to deal with it at all. Because I do want to, I am curious to find out about that. 45, now 47. That's my other way of getting around using his name. Because sometimes it's a mouthful to say 34-time convicted felon, twice adjudicated rapist. That's the truth. We know that's for real. I'll find ways of getting around that as best I can. And because I've had a number of people say, don't even say his name. Don't even say his name. Don't even give him any credibility by mentioning his name. So I'll do my best to not do that. All right. Now, that person has been taunting our neighbors. Kind of started with Mexico, then decided to, direct some craziness toward Canada, and even decided to, say that, he wants to buy Greenland. I guess he thinks that because he's, is this so-called real estate savant, that he's just going to acquire land and property. I want you guys to send emails to that person's communication folks, letting them know that it's an insult to say what he's saying about Canada. It starts with us, guys. This goes back to what I said earlier. I want you guys to send emails to him. Please do that. Send text messages, however you can communicate with that person and his people to say, stop making those disrespectful comments about Canada being our 51st state. Let him know and let his people know that that's beyond inappropriate, that it's insulting to us as a country to have this dude making those kinds of statements. Sorry about the ruffling of the papers, but do that. That's how you can start to have an impact. And if nothing else, not just be frustrated and throwing something at the table. Send it at the TV. Apologize for that. And then, after taunting Panama about, reclaiming the Panama Canal, he does go forward and makes a selection for the ambassador to that country. But in each case, whether it was Mexico and the new president there, or if it was Canada, or if it's been Panama, in each case, the leaders of those countries have said, essentially, bring it on. Whether it be tariffs or trying to reclaim territory, or not reclaim, let me back up, trying to claim territory. Thank you, Devin. Devin was shaking his head. No. Claiming territory, tariffs, or anything that would be viewed as an unfriendly partner in the way in which he's presenting that to these countries. It's just, I appreciate that those leaders have stepped up and said, no, here's what you're going to cause, and here's what you're going to end up doing by furthering these kinds of conversations. And I'm glad to see that those three leaders of those three countries that are our neighbors, direct and indirect neighbors, have said, no, we're not going to let that happen. I believe, as I said last week, that there are going to be a lot of people that are going to push back, and they're going to be world leaders that are going to push back. Yeah, right now they're probably, playing a little bit of footsie to see what, they're probably trying to test the waters. And so some that have talked with him and met with him, I don't necessarily think that they've kissed the ring. Now, some of the American business leaders that have had interactions with them, I think that they might be kissing the ring. But I think some of the world leaders that have chimed in are not. I think they're just testing the waters to see kind of where and what, and then they're preparing themselves and their countries and their citizens for what they may have to do to deal with this knucklehead. That's what I think is happening. And I'm hoping, fingers crossed, that that's what the president of Mexico, that Trudeau has been doing, and the leader of Panama and their ways of coming out are trying to focus on that they just got to see what they're up against. Maybe I don't think I'm wrong there. I just don't know to what extent that's what they're trying to do. But hopefully that is they're going to be their way forward. And I'm hoping that other countries throughout the world do the same thing, that have been our allies for a long, long time, that their position is we're going to see what we're up against, and then here's going to be our strategy. And I hope that they are setting up their systems to be able to be prepared in this fight. I think that we here in the U.S. as regular everyday citizens know that that's what we have to do, and that's why I've said so many times, let's make sure that we are recharging. But I think these world leaders are taking that position, and I certainly have seen evidence to kind of back that up. There's certain people that are leaving Congress, whether they decided to resign or retire or they didn't win their reelection. And one of them that this caught me as a really good quote that just kind of made me chuckle. And the outgoing Representative Cori Bush was talking about in an interview how she was asked if there were some things that she would have done differently in terms of what she could have done different or better in her time in Congress and how progressives should respond going forward. And she said, this is what caught my eye about this, is it's a phrase that I've used every now and again, and I've certainly used it here and even on the family meeting with Eric Grant. But here's the statement. She said, quote, "I probably could have flipped over a few more tables." So to that end, former Representative Cori Bush, I'm with you on that. And because she says, this is also part of the interview that she did, that more progressives should be willing to, in their response to the results of 2024, be willing to flip over a few more tables. There you go. How many times have you heard me say that? Be prepared to flip over some tables. And maybe some people might think that's a little bit too literal to say that. And as I've, sort of said, the sledgehammer comment that I use about bringing a sledgehammer is with your words, not literally bringing a sledgehammer to an encounter, but bring a sledgehammer of words or a toolkit of words. But former or outgoing Representative Cori Bush feels that she probably could have flipped over a few more tables, and that could be part of the progressive way of being in a response to the 2024 election. So, not my words. This is what she was quoted as saying. So, I'm curious as to if that will happen, if her soon-to-be former colleagues are going to take that position as well, or if they're going to be more willing to to let the tables stay upright. I don't know. I know I'd be knocking over some more tables. I'd be making sure, because listen, they have, meaning the Republicans have, enough people who are yelling loudly and oftentimes saying stupid things. And who are we talking about? It ranges from anybody from Matt Gaetz, who, by the way, got in a little bit of hot water this weekend. But Matt Gaetz, Lauren Boebert, and Marjorie Greene, that's just a short list, that they're knocking over some tables with their words. So, Representatives Raskin and Representatives Swalwell and others, keep knocking over those tables. I think that not literally, but in terms of your political discourse, to let people know that you're there for the fight. I've heard the phrase, the label given to them as alpha liberals. That's not the one I would use. I would just say folks that are standing up for what they believe in. And we need to, that needs to be vocal and verbalized more and more. So kudos to outgoing Representative Cori Bush for saying that I probably could have flipped over a few more tables. How about that? Not a bad way to go to this break. Guys, the number is 773-763-9278. Choose Views. We'll be right back. What can I tell you guys? Our bellies are full of food from Christmas dinners and all the rest. So every now and again we hit the wrong button. But and then we correct it. So thanks for your comments and compliments on correcting and fact checking ourselves in real time. Guys, I appreciate that. Listen, it's I was sent this. This is pretty cool. As I said earlier, referring to him as a 34-time convicted felon and twice adjudicated rapist is a mouthful. So sometimes a shorter version of that guy, 45 and 47, is a way to go. But it was sent to me that I could refer to him as, or call him 34XCF. That's not bad. I have to remember that 34XCF. Will be the way, part of the way forward in referring to you guys know who. 34XCF. Not bad. Anyhow, there's people that are saying that these cuts that 34XCF and his people want to implement, Muskrat and Vivek want to implement, are we've heard this by so many folks this last month, since the election month in a couple of weeks, are going to impact the people on the right. And as I said earlier, they voted for trying to make sure that others don't have things and that others are kept from this and others are kept from that. But not me. I as a good Republican, I as a good Christian, I'm not going to be impacted by it, but those people will be, as if to say that, you're not 1 or 2 degrees of separation from somebody in your family. And let's go to the folks in Wyoming as an example that are impacted by the vote that they just dropped in this national election. They're, what are your senators doing for you that is going to benefit you, that, some of Trump's policies may indirectly or directly impact you in a negative way. But you're the smartest people in the room. You know more than everybody else. You're smarter than us. And your vote to fool yourself into these things is actually going to end up hurting you. We've heard that conversation. We're going to hear that over and over and over again. I was caught by the conversation around some of the firefighters in New York who are now ticked off, but they voted for the 34XCF. But now they're upset. And there's other groups. But ultimately, I think Robert Reich has it well stated. And Devin and I put together this clip that kind of highlights this conversation.
Going to find the trillion they want to cut, by the way?
He's talking about $2 trillion in cuts.
Right.
And he's saying it's going to be, what did he use the term? It's going to be
a hardship.
A hardship.
For many, at first.
But not for the billionaires.
Well,
not for him. No, it's going to be a hardship for people who will have less Social Security, less Medicare, less Medicaid, less Affordable Care Act, while there will be tax cuts, you can imagine, galore, and Elon's own contracts, his billions and billions of contracts for SpaceX, and even Tesla and all of the other things he gets from the federal government. Oh, you think those are going to be cut? Not a chance.
I know it.
Yeah. So I've been preaching on this for a while, that some of the review of his government contracts should be done immediately, because there should not be a private citizen having that much access and proximity to the benefits that impact millions and millions and millions of Americans. And I try not to go so far as to say, and I think about this when I'm out and about, particularly when I'm driving around. If you're a progressive, and this may sting a little bit, but I'm sure there's people who have thought this that I'm about to say, and maybe you don't have the venue to say it, but you do. You have it in your everyday lives. But if you got a problem with Elon Musk right now and what he's talking about doing in terms of trying to take away benefits from Americans in this new department or group called Doge, if you have a problem with that and you own a Tesla vehicle, you probably need to think about that for a second. And, maybe you bought the vehicle before Elon showed his real colors. I get that. Okay, this is why I said it might, pinch a few people and get some folks, kind of ruffle some feathers. But that's how we have to be with all these scenarios where, like, here's an example. We need to look at the history of Vivek Ramaswamy and his business interest. We need to look at the same thing with Peter Thiel. And the list goes on. And some of the companies may surprise you when you go, wow, I didn't realize that they were heavily donating to the Republican, now MAGA party. And so, you can't, I know that sometimes it's just, you can't yank your hand out of the vice. You have to take it out gently. But that's where we are. And that's why this clip from Robert Reich is important, is that this guy wants to do this. And you guys have heard the reports. I'm not bringing you something that's brand new. You know that this has been out there. But you do have the power to say, all right, I'm not going to be particularly accepting of that. And I want more vetting by us as a country of these people that are taking away benefits that are to our fellow countrymen. And particularly if this dude's going to still get his government contracts and not have them be scrutinized. So this is, again, a moment where it starts with us, guys. And I know that that's almost a mantra now, and it probably should be that way and continue to be that way. But if we're going to stand in this void, one of the best, easiest ways to do it is to look at where your dollars are going every day and ask yourself the question, is there an alternative way for me to get the same good and or service without my money going to a company that is against my permanent interest or my daily interest? And, I think that sometimes, and again, this is the pinch. You can't always, get rid of something that you bought that was manufactured or sold by a company that you no longer are in alignment with. I know that's not the easiest thing to do, but it does. You do have to think about it in terms of how you go forward. If you're a progressive and you're looking at buying an electric vehicle, and you are a true progressive in the sense that we talk about here, then buying a Tesla shouldn't even be on your radar. Now, press pause on that for a second. I know that many of us are on Twitter because we haven't given up that space. And a lot of it's due to the fact that we want to still have access to the messaging and be able to talk to people. But more importantly, we don't want to give up that space and let it be filled by further craziness. I understand that. I'm in that space, and I openly admit that. I'm looking at this in terms of the consumer expenses that we all have and the income that we all have. How do you discern? How you have to have some discernment in determining where you're going to put those dollars. So, for example, we could look at the Coke industry. We could look at Coke Industries and the Koch brothers, who are ardently against progressive politics. They, for years, were playing sitting on the fence. And as time has gone by, and Tom Hartman's been a great champion in this space, and others, in terms of talking about what that company has done and where they had their fingers in so many different things. I got an email from, I think it was Jennifer D, and maybe someone else as well, that literally said, I didn't know how much, and if I'm wrong about, there were a couple people, so kudos to all of you guys, that pointed out how they didn't realize how much the Coke Industries and the Coke family was into so many different companies and so many different products that we buy and use every day. And that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. They want to make these cuts, but to get where they've gotten to, they receive benefits from our federal government and in many cases our state governments to be able to prop up their businesses. So our response has to be something where we decide that we're not going to allow them to have free reign anymore with certain products that they sell. And that's where the work is for us as consumers, as individuals, as progressive liberal Democrats, is to ask ourselves, where can I can't yank my hand out of the vice on everything that I spend money on. But I sure as heck can say, these things over here, I need to find some other business to work with that has the same, product or service. And so, for example, going back to Tesla, if you were looking at buying an EV, there are others in the marketplace right now. And I'm not going to do a Consumer Reports comparison, but there are others out there that that those companies hopefully have a better position as it relates to how they will use your dollars. And let me put it in this vein: you could do research on one of the other EV companies, and find that company, there's some issues with them that you're not completely in line with. I think this is where you have to have a little bit of discernment and say, okay, I'm not fully in alignment with this company over here as it relates to an EV. However, they're not openly saying to me, or they're not in a harmful way saying that we're going to come after certain benefits that affect so many Americans. They're not openly saying, like Musk is saying about Social Security and Medicare and other benefits, that we need to go after those. And so this is where a little bit of discernment comes into play, and you kind of have to say, all right, I'm going to slowly pull my hand out of the vice. And going forward, I'm going to consciously not put it into a different vice. That's where your power, that's what reclaiming, in my opinion, that's where reclaiming your power is so important. It's the subtle adjustments, first of all, over time, and with lots of people making subtle adjustments, will have impact. I can assure you, and I don't want to, I do want to laundry list some of the companies that Coke Industry owns, but do the research, guys. Google that company right now, and you may be shocked, as I received a couple of emails last week and the week before about that. Shocked at the companies that Coke Industry has their hands in. And maybe you can say, that particular product I'm going to find through another source. That's all we're asking, or at least in this case, I'm suggesting. And do the research on any business that you decide to do business with. And they may not always cut the mustard. And you may have to let them go. And it could be one of your favorites. And I think that when you do that, when you put in the work to find out who those organizations are and what they actually are doing in terms of, their political conversations, who they're supporting politically, their stance when it comes to the economy, their stance when it comes to things like the environment and national security, and the list goes on, that's going to empower you to say, I don't have to just go with this company because that's what I've been doing for a long time. And that's why these conversations around mergers, and when I talked about this last week and have been for a while, with companies like Albertsons and Kroger, are so important that we pay attention to. Because when we recognize that those companies can swallow up so much so quickly, having administrations that push back is important. And that's why this we got a call last week from someone that said it's about deregulation. And what's that going to lead to? I believe the more we push back and make it known that those companies can't own everything, the better position we're going to be in. So, all right, guys, we're going to take a quick break as we wrap up. 773-763-9278. Choose Views. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to Choose Views with Richard Chu on WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk.
Hey, guys, welcome back to Choose Views. As we wrap up this day after Christmas show, make sure to stay tuned for our WCPT Progressive lineup. Now, we may have some rebroadcasts along the way, but the Stephanie Miller Show, my radio sister on the West Coast, the Tom Hartman Show, professor of everything progressive, Joan Esposito, live, local and progressive, and of course, Patty Vasquez, my bookend that's driving you home. Make sure and remember that we have, as progressives, some great voices, and it has to always be about being full steam ahead. Received a couple different text messages from you guys about how in individual marketplaces you've taken a stance on not using certain products or serving certain businesses or patronizing certain businesses, I should say. In a broader sense, it just takes a little bit. I mean, listen, I'll put it to you this way. Remember how I said a few weeks ago, sit down and come up with a list of the businesses that you want to find out a little bit more about. If you want to start having some impact and take control and have a little bit of autonomy in your thinking about who you're doing business with, is just sit down and come up with a list of businesses and then do a little bit of research and find out who finances them, who supports them, where they advertise. And the list can go on and on. You can create your own little model. And I do this in my own way as part of my everyday life, but also in preparing for the show. But sit down and say, who is it? Who are these companies? What's really behind the curtain? And again, I'm not saying yanking your hand out of the vice, but very, gently and gingerly determining how you're going to pull your hand out of a certain vice and maybe move in a different direction. That's a part of this. That's empowering yourself and those around you that you care to be an active participant in this process. And I know that if you were to expand that into, certain companies that are some of the, the Fortune 500, you can start with that. You can start with the Fortune 500 companies. Create a list. Just do, the next 10 weeks, do 50 a week. And I'm giving you a homework assignment. I like doing that. Probably would have. Anyhow, homework assignment so that you're aware and you're empowered. You're not blindsided. Take the Fortune 500 companies. And over the next 10 weeks, you could do 5 a day, or 10 a day out of a 5-day week. Just look up each of those 50 companies that you decide to break out over this next number of weeks and Google them and find out a little bit about who they are. Find out who the leadership is. And often, because listen, guys, let me put it to you this way. Whether it be me, whether it be Stephanie, Tom, Joan, Patty, Edwin, anybody that's part of CPT, directly or indirectly, or any of the other truly progressive conversations, we know a lot, but we don't know every doggone thing. And we are informed and we are plugged in and we get lots of content and information sent to us and lots of different things that we report on and talk about. And we try to bring you the most positive, forward-thinking message as we can every single day. And oftentimes that's going to mean some things aren't always nice. Sometimes things are going to be tough, but we highlight them so that we can go forward. But as part of that, what I want to empower you guys to be thinking about is what is it that I can do as an individual? Because some mornings I'm not going to listen to Richard. Listen, I'm a realist. I get that. I can't listen to Richard. I'm tired. I'm busy. I got something going on. Whatever. I'm not going to listen to any of the programming. I'm going to turn it off, turn it down, whatever. That is going to happen. And what I want you guys to be able to do is say, how can I literally hands-on be part of the fix as we go forward? And I think that if you were to just take the Fortune, the largest 500 companies in America, and over the next 10 weeks, break that down into 50 companies a week, 10 a day, that you Google at some point in your day and find out more about that organization to see if they are in alignment with the things that, like Robert Reich is talking about in terms of cuts. Are they supporting those cuts? Are they supporting mergers that are going to impact your life? Do they have people in the company, or is the leadership of that company moving or have been in a direction of supporting Republican or MAGA policies and conversations and ideas? If you don't do anything about it specifically, you should at least know who those organizations are. And it could range from Ford to GM to, Stellantis to Apple, and just the list goes on. At least know. And in this era of, a certain amount of deregulation that may come our way in this next administration, in this era of consolidation of companies or mergers, you want to be aware of what's happening, but what's going on behind the curtain. And I know I'm going to talk about this again because we're going to see these things as these court cases come forward with the Albertsons and the Krogers of the world, and Nissan and those automakers that are looking at coming together, and other businesses that I talk about with Choose Views News. I just believe it gives you it gives you power. That knowledge gives you some power. It gives you some an ability to come up with a strategy and how you're going to deal with those businesses, and then also the ability to say, listen, I'm going to contact those companies. Doing that kind of work, the reason that I've said this before, that it's a double-edged, in a good way, sword, is you get to send a message to them that you're paying attention. One, at the same time, I believe that as a progressive liberal Democrat, it is a little bit, it's kind of self-soothing to say, I didn't just yell at the screen, I did something. And so that's part of the reason that I share this with you guys and give you this homework assignment, is I want you to feel empowered. And we can have some of the best people on our show, and we can talk to some of the smartest minds in the world, and we will next year be talking to some pretty smart people, because we're going to have a lot of folks that are going to have a lot to say about what the new administration is doing. But that's where I think you guys, I don't want anybody to feel like you don't have a way of being impactful. It's a homework assignment, and yes, I'm not the professor of anything like Tom Hartman is, but at least I understand the impact of getting involved. And you have so many tools in front of you, please use them. Be aware of what's around you, and by doing that, you stay in the fight. That's one way of, excuse me, I believe that's one of the ways that you guys are going to be able to stay in the fight. Just take that as the homework assignment. Fortune 500, next 10 weeks, 50 a week, 10 a day. Learn something about those organizations and see where you're actually spending your money and where you're actually, how you're actually being influenced by those organizations. So, all right, guys, I'm in looking at my notes and looking at that clip from Robert Reich, I wanted to be able to talk about how that links back to some of the cuts that some of these fools want to make that are going to impact your life. All right. We had an opportunity earlier in the week to talk to my man Steve Lawson with the Michigan Families for Fair Care, and I hope you guys have reached out to him and had a chance to, have had a chance to continue to follow their organization. He was our guest on Monday, and talking about the importance of local politics and local involvement. It's critically important that you guys maintain that kind of awareness, and that's why we want to continue to bring those folks to you. And then Tuesday, we had a chance to talk with Paul Gustav Feller Simmons, who graduate student lecturer, University of Chicago and Northwestern, University of Illinois Chicago, I should say, and Northwestern University, and that great find that he made of the various forms of Christmas music and the manuscripts and all. Really a cool guy, and it was great to have him on right before we headed out for the Christmas Day holiday. And I believe tomorrow we may have a conversation with our good friend Karen Byrne from True Blue Politics Podcast. So that'll be fun to kind of round out the week and chat with her, and most definitely bring you guys some of our normal Friday things, which are things to do in Chicago. And a little bit of surprise, I may be bringing you guys things to do in other cities in 2025. I say that that's one of those things that I'll let that kind of sneak out. But I may be picking some other cities, hint, hint, that I might want to say, hey, these are things to do in this place, in this market, in this city. So just kind of, adding to the Choose Views conversation. And as always, it's great to be with you guys. The day after Christmas, 2024, December 26, 2024. Great to be with you guys as always. Thanks for listening. Thanks for texting. Thanks for calling. And as always, take a deep breath and make your life count. We'll see you tomorrow.